Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last session of Honoring Proud Voices. We've spent the last month hearing from these beautiful voices. We've heard from elders, we've heard from heroes, we've heard about and learned about those that don't necessarily fit in the box of gender identity. And today, for our last session, we're going to take a dip into the world of queer entertainment, which you may know as drag. But what's extra special about today is we're used to seeing and hearing about drag queens. Today, we're going to meet two drag kings. So let me do this. Luke Modelo is a Chicanx drag king raised in Los Angeles, now living in the Bay Area. He enjoys creating riveting and electric performances that erase the lines of masculinity, femininity, and more. He has been doing drag for nearly 2 years and has performed at such events as Oaklash, the Bay Area's annual drag festival, and Austin International Drag Festival. You can follow him online on Instagram at luke.modelo. Jota Mercury is an international award-winning drag king who works to constantly challenge the ideologies of machismo and male dominance. He stays playing with gender in not only the funniest, but sexiest ways. A versatile performer, you never know what to expect with Jota Mercury. We'll meet these two guys in a moment, but first we'll watch this video.
Y es todo. Ay, güey, ya es enero. Pues yo quiero escribir a mi papá. Querido papá de la Casa Mercurio, ha sentido como toda la vida desde que le vi en noviembre. Recuerdo su abrazo fuerte, su risa y sus gritos vehementes cuando señora Xvera cantó el mejor. Anhelo el día en que la coronavirus no existe y podemos regresar como el tiempo antes.
Muchísimas gracias. Viene, muchachos. Con una ilusión es loca esperanza, sufre el corazón. Mi vida es tu vida, amor de los dos. Me haces sufrir, ya lo pagarás, tú no tienes perdón. Échale, ¿no? Como le enseñé. Ten compasión. tu vida. Amor de los dos, tú me haces sufrir, ya lo pagarás, tú no tienes perdón. Échale pues. Si te he ofendido, perdóname. Ten compasión. Mi vida es tu vida. Amor de los dos, tú me haces sufrir, ya lo pagarás, tú no tienes perdón.
That was amazing. Thank you too. Welcome, Luke and Jota. Thanks so much for being here. Just first off, please share your story with us. How did you get into drag? How did you get your drag name? Tell us about it. Okay, that was it.
About like about 5 years ago, I was really interested in performing. I didn't know what that meant, but I just wanted people to look at me. And I decided to take burlesque classes because I had been to a couple burlesque shows in the Bay Area, which was really fun. And it definitely gave me insight into like stage presence and all of those wonderful things, but it wasn't super fulfilling. So I remember I had gone to a drag show at the White Horse when I was in college. And I went to St. Mary's where they have like a 414 system. So it's like 4 months of like one semester, and then you get a month to study like whatever the hell you want. So they have like a lot of random classes. One of them was a drag class. And they used to go take the class to the White Horse to go to Rebel Kings. And a friend had invited me. And I remember going and being like this. I wasn't expecting this for like a drag show. This is crazy. This is like a bunch of little dudes and mustaches. This is like not what I was expecting at all. And that memory kind of went in my pocket. And then years later, after the burlesque classes, after all of that, I ended up at a show again. And I had gotten close with another performer who eventually became my drag parent, who also did burlesque. And they were like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to the host. You're going to perform. And I was like, okay. So they introduced me to my now drag brother, Joey Gelato, who was like, hey, we have a show in 2 weeks. You're in it. Bring your music on a CD.
Sorry.
So I remember going, I performed, and I was like addicted. Oh my gosh, it like filled me with so much joy and energy. And like, I knew that that's like what I was really seeking. So the name comes in because I had picked a name for burlesque, which was MJ Mercury. And I decided to spell it out phonetically because I thought I was going to be different. And I also, Mercury comes from my love of Freddie Mercury. So that's what I went with for burlesque. That's what I still use for burlesque. And when drag came about, I was like crap, I need a name. Let's just hack off M. So I'm just going to go by J Mercury. So I did that for a little bit. And then everyone thought that I wasn't Mexican, and that hurt my feelings. So I changed my name to Jota, which is Spanish for J. And it's also like a play on words. It is, if you're familiar with like Mexican Spanish in particular, it's an insult that's often used for queers, but I'm reclaiming it. That's why I use it.
Go.
And that is where the name came from for me. And I've been performing ever since for Rubber Gates.
So this is the first time I've heard the background story of Jota Mercury, and I'm really surprised at how many parallels there are to mine. So I have never performed on stage. I ended up being an engineering major in college and a theater minor, where all of the design engineering majors went because we wanted to find our own people. So I have a background in costume, hair, and makeup design, and it was a production of Hairspray that had an $80,000 budget at a college level production. So it says to you how hard we went with LED lights and wigs and everything. And the person who played Edna was in my year. We had done classes together, and his name was Nick, and was like, I love like doing this kind of drag thing. I'm thinking about becoming a drag queen. Like I'm going to be an SF because I went to school in the Bay Area. So it's, you know, relatively easy for us to get up to the city. And the last night that we had our production, it was gender bend night. So I was like, oh, haha, I'm going to be so funny and be the Zac Efron version of Link Larkin from the movie. So there's a photo of my friend Nick as Edna, myself as Link Larkin, Zac Efron. And that, I say that because Nick and I kept in touch, and, you know, was really Nick performs by Biddy B, because her last name is Biddle, and, you know, just started going to Biddy's shows and was like, oh my God, like this is so cool. Like how awesome is it for, you know, these people to do this really cool thing? And like, I'm obsessed. I like went to a lot of shows, and I had just moved apartments, and Biddy came to my apartment warming party and was like, hey, I'm actually moving back to Philadelphia with my family. I'm going to have a goodbye drag show at the Cafe, which is a pretty big club in SF. You're performing drag. You have 6 weeks. And I was like, excuse me? Around this same time, I ended up going to a drag competition with a friend just to watch it. And it was the Cali King or SF Drag King competition, where a wild card appeared from the audience by the name of J Mercury. And J Mercury ended up winning the wild card or whatever it was, and then winning the entire competition. Like smoked out the competition. And I mean, mind you, I was about 6 drinks in, but I remember you had taken your top off, and for pasties, there were sombreros. And I was like, I have never seen a king, first of all, perform. Second, someone who combines like being a king with our culture and our heritage. Because for folks who don't know, in the Latinx community, there's a lot of homophobia. There's very deep roots in Catholicism, colonization, and, you know, it's hard to have space for both, especially like in our biological families. So, you know, there's not many kings to begin with. There's not many POC performers in the Bay. So to find that intersection is just like, whoa. And I was enthralled. I actually took a picture of you, and I sent it to you years after we met.
Yes, yes, you did.
And you were like, whoa, you went to that show. And I was like, yes.
Wow.
I looked like, I did dress up in drag, and my friends said it looked like as if the guy from the Tapatio hot sauce bottle joined a K-pop band. So, you know.
You just got bland up.
Yeah, but you know, around that time, so it was that my own Luke's debut, which is in August 2019. So going back to my name, in the 6 weeks that I had, I was like, oh man, I gotta come up with a name. It's gotta be a good name. Oh my gosh, what's happening? And my dad had always told me, well, if we were to have a son, I would have named him Luke because I really loved watching Cool Hand Luke when I was a kid. And I was like, okay, like I really like Luke, like that's a solid name. So if I use my first name for my dad, I'm going to give my last name in drag to my mother, who is indigenous from Mexico, came here illegally when she was 15 by herself, not knowing English, not knowing anyone. She's like my hero. But it was really hard to find a word that fit like anything. And I was thinking of like very white sounding names and was just like, nothing is sticking until someone who's not even like a friend, just an acquaintance was like, why don't you name yourself after a beer? And I was like, holy crap. Like, wait a minute. So I was like, oh, Pacifico, Corona, Modelo, because Biddy had always called me a look king. Like I'm a pretty boy. Modelo means model in English. So it's a play on words. And that's how Luke Modelo, I shopped it around to friends. People were like, this is great. So Luke Modelo was born. And started going to a little bar called Moby Dick in SF because the Rebel Kings of Oakland started having a show in SF. And the second show I went to, my friend brought her expired ID and forgot to bring her passport. So we watched the show from outside the bar, but everyone took turns being guards. So we actually got to talk to folks. And eventually they're like, hey, like, let's have you perform. And started knowing, seeing Jota at shows and being like, hey, like, you're cool. Started learning, you know, that we're both have indigenous roots from Mexico, that, you know, we have a similar career. And then the pandemic hit and everyone had to move to digital drag. But
which you like conquered, by the way.
Oh no, I just have a friend who really loves videography. That's the secret to everything. If you can export your work, export it. You know, eventually I was like, oh my God, I think I'm just gonna ask like Jota to be Luke's drag dad. And I did, and the answer was like, I would be honored. Of course. And it was just like my heart exploded. Like, it was such a pleasure. And you know, a month after, I was having a really bad pandemic day, and I got a package in the mail, and it was a custom luchador mask because one of the shows that we were going to do before the pandemic hit was a lucha libre show.
Yes.
And it was just like the sweetest note, and I was like, wow, someone sees me for who I am and cares for me outside of this Luke persona. And that a little over a year, so that's
yeah.
So
and
yeah,
one of the quotes I say is Jota is the Vicente to my Alejandro. For folks who don't know, Vicente Fernandez is a very famous, probably like one of the famous mariachi singers in Mexico. His son is Alejandro Fernandez, and we joke that we have the exact height difference because Vicente is like 5'2" and Alejandro is like 6 foot, so it's really funny to see us next to each other.
Yes. We are in chairs right now.
Yeah, you can still tell like a full color.
No.
So Luke, you mentioned that Jota is your drag dad. You talked a bit about family and culture, and especially queer community. You know, we have our chosen family. Can you like educate us on what this drag dad, cousin, brother drag families are and what that's all about?
It's wild.
We joke that everyone who is somehow related to an RKO member is all related to each other. Yeah. We're very tempted to do a family tree, and it's probably going to look like an enigmatic squiggle. Like
amoeba strip, if you will, of family relations. But well, I can tell you my experience. I don't know if it's changed, to be honest, but when I first started, there's a couple ways it can go. You can, you know, really hang out with someone and they naturally become your mentor. And then it's like, hey, do you want to be my drag parent? Sometimes people will be like, oh, honey, you need help. I'm going to help you. I'm going to be your drag parent. I've not experienced that. I don't really like when people do that. I would rather like, I ask I ask the person, which when I first started, someone was like, I'm going to take you under my wing and help you. But then it was weird. And the energy is just weird.
A little bit
It was just
forced.
weird.
Yeah.
And a little self-serving for the other person and just strange. But when I met my drag parent now, Javier and Miguel, I asked them, I was like, will you be my drag parent? Like, I want this. And like, I was very sure, because for me, what I was asking is, will you be my mentor? Will you share your knowledge with me? Will you be there for me? Like in multiple ways? Like it's like kind of like asking someone out, but like on another level of like, are you committed to me? Because I'm committed to you and the art, and I want to make you proud. Like is like another aspect of it, especially if you don't have that kind of relationship with your like bio family. It's something that's taken very seriously. And in my experience, going down to like LA and seeing the houses and stuff, it is taken very, very seriously. Up here, I feel like it's a little more lax, but people are still like, no, we're family. Like they claim each other very hard. They, you know, they are like die hard for each other.
What's a house?
A house is like, I mean, for instance, like since Luke is my child, if I was gonna have a house, it would be like House of Mercury. And then I would have all my drag children in that house. But like I said, that's way more prominent in SoCal, and you see that a lot in the ballroom scene and things like that. East Coast, especially Chicago. But here, it's more so just like family. Like that's my son, that's my cousin or uncle or grandpa. And that the way that happens is usually it's based on the relationships that preceded the newer like parental relationship. So for instance, I am part of the drag troupe Rebel Kings. Like they like proposed to me. They all got down on their knees and like gave me a ring, and it was really cute. But when that happened, we all became brothers. And so we're all brothers, but one of my brothers got into drag because a couple of my other brothers. So technically those brothers are also like his dad. So that's when it starts to get really crazy. And it's kind of like the British Constitution, where it's not written down anywhere, but they just go based off of the decisions made beforehand.
A lot of yelling.
And I think that says something to the culture. Like I think beyond maybe like Chicago, San Antonio, like there's not a big king scene. So like it's very likely that we may be the first drag kings you've ever seen. And you know, with the rise of shows like RuPaul's Drag Race and the
Dragula even.
Dragula,
one exactly.
You know, it's a visibility thing. And I think, you know, something that I have been really reflecting on, and I was just telling Hooker today, like this is my first Pride as a drag king, because Pride 2020 didn't exist. 2020 didn't exist for anyone, basically. And just like how grateful I am to have a group of people who I can confide in, or I can say like, hey, can I run this performance idea by you? Like, I'm not sure what this is. Or, you know, when I think about, because I also had someone who was like, I'll be your drag parent, and just like never talked to me, never connected with me. We had really awkward conversations versus, you know,
to naturally happen.
Yeah, like when that's why there's a lot of online groups of drag kings. So we're like, oh my God, they exist beyond, you know, whatever 5-mile radius I'm in. And a lot of people are like, oh, like who wants to be my drag parent? And a majority of responses are, you know, you have to shop around is not the right word I'm looking for, but it's
dating.
natural.
It's like dating. I will compare it to that through and through. Like, you know, you really, or I don't know, you know, like being this
dating is a good example.
It is a good example, but
I have told, thinking about like a vulnerable point where I was like, ooh, I wouldn't tell this to anyone. The video that you all watched earlier, my mother is very Bible thumping Mexican Catholic and does not know about my drag and my art. And I'm at a certain point, I was very scared of telling her, because otherwise I'd probably be kicked out of the house again. And I confided in my drag dad, and I said, hey, like, can we have a conversation around this? Because I think if there is any opportunity to talk to my mom about what I do and how it's an integral part of my essence and my spirit, it's gonna be a song that she can't deny because she knows this song by heart. Everyone knows the song by heart.
Combine it with something she really loves.
Exactly. And you know, I feel like we had like a 45-minute, just really tender conversation that allowed me to know that even if this plan backfired, someone was going to be there for me and hold space. I haven't seen my mom be that awkward ever. She was just like,
I love that. She realized she had a son too, and she was
yeah. And she was like, how do you know this song? And I'm like, oh, I sing it with my drag dad. But you know, we call it performing, and it's like very like, but that was such a huge moment for me, even if, you know, someone else might be like, dude, you just like showed your mom a video. And I'm like, no. Like, considering the traumatic past about my queerness that I've had with her, that was a huge turning point, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had a drag dad or talked to my drag dad about it and how to navigate that.
Wow.
Yeah, Mexican parents are funny about drag.
So, okay, going back a little bit, or maybe forward, I don't know, but so, you know, Luke, you have a background in theater. Jota, you also do burlesque. This, like, you definitely play the spectrum of gender roles, both in life and in performance. And I think that was a big, well, obviously it is huge in the gay queer community. This like idea and concept of gender bending, right? It's how a lot of us are, or how a lot of us can be or sway or whatever. And so I think drag is so huge in the queer community. Can you just talk a little bit more about you know, gender bending and gender expression and drag, and why it's important to you, and then maybe also to the queer community at large?
Yeah, absolutely. So
That's me.
Okay.
Speaking of my mother heard just
Her
in the
ears
ethos,
are
and now
ringing.
she's like, I should call right at an important time. So
Well, I think so. Whenever this subject comes up, the first thing that I always want to cover or like mention is that transness and drag are different things, but they are related. And what I mean by that is that if you do drag, it doesn't automatically mean that you're trans. But when I did drag, it opened up my world to be able to explore a lot of parts of my gender expression that I otherwise would have never even touched. So I'm very grateful for drag in that way. But I want to be like, I really want to emphasize that that is not absolutely everybody's experience, and to like not assume that all drag performers are trans, because I think maybe way back when, people thought like would make innocent jokes like that, but that's not the truth. And there's so many different gender identities now. I mean, there always have been, but now we're developing the language, we're talking about it more. And hopefully it's like not such a scary thing to talk about anymore. But that being said, yeah, drag opened up my world, my gender expression for Bex of who I am every day. And then for Jota, you know, I felt very, I guess, starting off in burlesque really helps with like the gender bending part, because I really love to play with all of it. Like I used to bind my chest, and now I've decided no, like Jota is not going to do that anymore. Jota's going to have like, you know, like breast out, but with chest hair and things like that. And like just find ways to mess with gender. And I think taking a couple steps back, like drag is a performance, and like transness is who you are. So like when you're performing drag, you can perform however, you can play with everything about it. And like sometimes when I'm in drag, like that's like when, you know, the gender bending comes up. And then I feel like I'm like going over definitions in my head, but like for drag, I guess that would for me would just be performing as any gender that I don't identify with on a daily basis. But for gender bending, it's like doing that and then also flipping it again. So,
and I think, you know, Jota brings up a great point that our language is ever evolving. Like 10 years ago, I don't think there was a discussion about transness, even if trans people definitely existed and have existed. And I wouldn't necessarily call it gender. Now, you know, having performed, I also am part of a Latin dance troupe. So I do bachata, salsa, merengue, and I have seen how the gender binary really just messes with people of like, girls have to follow and men are gonna lead and the girls are gonna wear heels and the boys have to wear flats and you can't control a spin and he needs to guide you. And it's been very interesting to me as a queer person because as a follow, usually I've had people be like, well, the man's got to do this and you have to listen. And I was like, the hell, I do not. Like, so I also lead and follow in dance and then explore what is my feminine divine, what is my masculine divine. And I think it's up to each of us to differentiate who we are and in that moment, how we want to express ourselves. And that's how I see drag. Is, you know, in that moment, what is the story I'm trying to tell? What is the message that I have? And how do I want my external to match what I am internally saying? The energy. Yeah. And
I just want to say quickly, finish.
That was a language I didn't have until I started doing drag. And I know a lot of folks are in the same boat where, you know, people are like, haha, I just like getting dressed up in boys' clothes. And then they're like, oh, I'm actually queer. Or, you know, I had a really dear friend of mine who's a trans activist and advocate said the first time that they did drag, they were like, oh, Roberto had a lot of fun. Like that was the happiest I've ever been. I should continue looking into this and exploring who I am. I feel like it just brings out a different side of you that our society doesn't have like the safety around for you to do it every day.
Yes, and then speaking to the like in that moment, there's a wonderful book that I read when I had first began like my non-binary trans discovery, and it's called Understanding Your Gender. And there's a part or like a section of the book that is like, hey, gender is a mood. Gender does not always like have to be the same thing every waking moment. You can go to work and you can use she, her, and that's okay. You're not fake. You're not queer enough. You can be they, them when you're around your friends. You can be, it changes just as easily as it does with your clothes. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the nature of gender and gender expression. That's why it's called gender expression, because we're able to express the way in which we're feeling in that moment. And yeah, people don't need to be a type of, you know, dress a certain way or anything like that. Like it's literally how you feel and what you want to be called, and you deserve the respect to that.
Yeah. And I think just like drag in the queer community, we have a lot of unconscious biases of what a lesbian should look like, of what a gay person should look like, what a drag queen should look like.
Or a drag king even, which is usually like a man in a construction outfit.
And a Macklemore haircut, as I call it, like a long top and the sides cut short. And,
Guilty.
You know, Magic Mike, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like,
Magic Mike.
I'm like, we're not as vapid as you think we are. Like we also have feelings and stories to tell. And
I love a himbo, but
oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, you were meant to do this Magic Mike persona. I'm gonna but you have me interested. Take my money.
Not all drag kings are Magic Mike. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, and it's I think recognizing our own biases, and that's something huge in the queer journey as well. You know, there's a lot of conversations that particularly come up around Pride Month about I'm not queer enough. Oh, I'm not non-binary enough. I'm not, and I've said this to myself, like, oh, I don't look trans, so like I shouldn't say that I'm trans.
Yeah, I used to tell people I'm non-binary, but don't call me trans. And they're like, Why?
They're
And I
like,
was
but
like,
non-binary is in the trans umbrella,
And
and I'm like, oh crap, like.
and then what a friend told me, and a lot of this has to do with my fear of taking up space as a small brown person, but a lot of my friend was like, hey, transness means that you're not cis. And I was like, oh my God, I'm trans. And it was suddenly like, okay for me to feel like, no, hey, I'm a trans non-binary person. Those things go like hand in hand, non-binary, genderqueer, like, yes, it's okay to claim it. I'm not.
I had this exact
scary,
same thing 3 weeks ago,
but
where I don't know, my drag brother from another species, the lizard king, the dragon king, did a number that used the non-binary flag. And I was like, I actually don't know what the non-binary flag means. Let me look it up. And lo and behold, one of the colors banned in the non-binary flag is gender fluid. And that's how I identify. So I had this weird transitive property mind blown thing where I was like, wait, if I am gender fluid, then I guess I'm non-binary. And if I'm non-binary, I'm whoa, like just I had to sit for 5 minutes and I was like, okay, am I okay? Do I need water? Do I need a blanket?
It's a big realization. I think a lot of our experience ties into of like what's expected for a trans person's experience. And that can go into like, elective surgeries and things like that. And just because like, people, this applies to anybody, but just because someone has decided not to like physically do anything to their body does not make them any less trans. And like, I think that goes for like our biases that can come up like in the queer community. That is something I think that can circle around, which is unfortunate. But also just like,
or not acknowledging how expensive it is.
That too. There's just like
if someone's like, I don't make enough money to have testosterone because I need to buy my insulin, and that price just shot up 200%. And then there are people in our community who fault them for that. And I'm like, whoa, so you want them to die of diabetes before they like
well, no, exactly. And it brings up the conversation of how like important it is to society for a trans person to pass, or like, for a trans person to look trans, whatever that means. Like which
like I can't afford to look.
Exactly. So
if you walk away with anything, just
you don't need to ever, you never need to look at someone and be like, oh, you look good. Just wow, you look like a girl. Hold it. Just hold it close and just be like, it's a compliment in my brain and I hope you feel the energy.
Or, instead of gender-based comments, like I say, wow, like you look really handsome today. And I have a trans non-binary friend who's like, wow, like that really resonated with me. And like using different adjectives, because adjectives are gender neutral, and if you think that they're assigned to gender, again, like check your own biases and what society tells us. So there are days where I'm like, oh, Jota, you look so cute, like cool, say what's on your mind in a way that is affirming to a person, no matter their gender or gender expression.
Guys, this is amazing. This is like drag 101 with a side of like trans non-binary 101, which is awesome. This is so great. There's a couple questions in the chat. Can I go ahead? Is there a gender neutral term in English? And I wonder if, does that sentence or question make sense?
Oh, no. So I think what I'm thinking of is like, in language, you have masculine, feminine, and neuter words. English is very much just masculine and feminine, unfortunately. And like we said, it's like forever changing. You have lots of different pronouns, but I don't think umbrella term is like queer, and that applies to sexuality and gender. If you're speaking just of gender, you're talking about gender queer. But
people, person.
Language, it's always,
Yeah.
And I say this giving it an example. So I'm learning ASL right now. And ASL typically, when referencing a man, will use the half top of your head, and a woman is the bottom half of your head. And it was very interesting to hear about a lot of the new developments that have come out in American Sign Language around using the middle part, so your ear coming from like your cheekbone to, for instance, this is dad, this is mom, but just saying parent or sibling, relative. And there are even differences in the deaf community about that, because we're like, no, like this is a sign. It's like, no, like language is allowed to evolve. We're allowed to evolve. We're allowed to change our minds. And I think about one thing that's been so affirming for me is to be able to live my truth and see someone like, I'm not talking about my mom anymore, but my dad has changed his mind. Like he has stopped using the word transsexual. We don't use transsexual anymore. But then like, hey, I actually want to know what this means. Like, can you help me understand it a little bit? Or like, I've noticed that he's stopped saying you need to find a husband. It's you need to find a partner who loves you. And it's like these little things that really make a difference. And, in his 60 plus years of life, like the fact that he can change his mind, like means a lot to me. And I wish that more people did that.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. So one person wrote, it's so helpful to hear that folks who are a part of the LGBTQ plus community struggle with terminology. I sometimes don't know what to say and I'm afraid of offending. This helps me to feel a little safer in asking questions. Thank you.
Welcome.
Always. And like, look, we're all human. We're all gonna like make mistakes, like especially in conversation, we're gonna be flying miles a minute, and the main thing is like, if I'm just like, hey, this is my friend Luke, his name means that's all it takes to fix something. You don't need to direct all the energy. You don't need to be like, oh, Luke, her, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Because all of a sudden it's about my experience of making the mistake. And no, the most important thing is, let me correct myself so all of you guys know this is he, actually. And I don't, all I need to do to say that is Luke, he, and like, you know what I mean? In conversation. It doesn't need to be a giant.
Moving on. Yeah.
Exactly.
And to make an even more safe space, like there are times where I mess up my friend's pronouns. And I've had a friend correct and be like, hey, Kenny uses they them. I was like, shoot. I made an assumption based on Kenny's gender presentation. And I, instead of projecting my views onto Kenny, I should affirm who Kenny feels like they are today.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it happens to us too. And I think there's a difference between, I'm new to using they, them pronouns for an individual. Like I just had a conversation with my manager this morning about like, hey, like I changed my pronouns in this like work CMS system to be she, her, and they, them. Like, do you have any questions for me? Because like this may be the first time that you've seen this. And I was very fortunate, and don't say I worked with they, thems before, because that was a little like, okay. But he had worked with people who use they, them pronouns before. And he was like, yeah, I just want to know what you prefer. I was like, oh, what a pleasant conversation. Yeah, I think that's.
Can you talk a bit about the flag that is behind you?
Yes, we'd love to. So let's.
This is the progressive.
This is the progressive rainbow flag. This is the old pride flag, not old, but
the original
without the pink. And then this flag attempts to address the inequities that happen in the LGBTQ plus community to brown and black folks, be it anti-blackness, colorism, classism, etc., and including the trans flag, and acknowledging that a lot of the work and revolutions that have happened in the LGBTQ plus community are thanks to trans folks.
Yes, sort of the foundation of it over here.
You will also see a new flag, a new-ish flag that's still being
Oh, wow.
tested, experimented on. Experimented is not a good word, but just like people are shopping it around,
Mhm.
where it's actually diagonal and it's the brown, black, trans, and then the rainbow. Because a critique or a piece of feedback on this flag is that this section is only 1/3 really, or 25% of the entire flag. Why not make it half to show that they are equal? I'm like, that's a fair point.
Well, so what's interesting and amazing is the colors. What are there? Six colors of the rainbow flag. The original rainbow flag did include trans folks, right? But I love this newer version of it because the same way gay lesbian culture has excluded trans people, even under this umbrella, we're all, LGBT, right, was the original. So much of the prejudice, hate, exclusion came towards trans folks. So to see it intentionally put into the flag, pretty amazing. And to include folks of color too. So thank you for explaining that. And I didn't know there was another newer coming. This one is only about a year old, right? I feel like last year I saw this for the first time.
A few max.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think the half and half came out last year. So this has probably been around for a few years. But it's also interesting to see. Jota and I work in, with many different organizations, and Rebel Kings of Oakland is always out in the community. It's very interesting to see people who are not willing to adopt this flag because of this, and how this is too controversial. Sorry for no vision folks, I'm referring to like the trans brown black section. And they're like, no, like that's too much. And it's like, well, what's too much about it? Like what?
We don't want to ruffle any feathers of the castrated gays.
Yeah. Like, so you want to take out the T in LGBTQ plus? And they're like, no, but that's okay. And I'm like, wait, but
they're just being lazy. They don't want to have to go buy new flags.
Yeah, I'm like, Castro, y'all need to do a little bit of work to update these flags.
Yeah.
And not gonna lie, like I think I call this like we have to clean up our own house. I think there's a lot of prejudices and biases within our own community. Like there is still biphobia, there's transphobia, and it's like, why? Like, this is supposed to be our safe space. And when you are re-traumatizing the community, when you are bringing in your biases from society into a space that is deemed safe for all, you're not doing yourself a service.
You're doing harm.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting to see the POC performers, and particularly POC kings who I work with, people of color, particularly our Black Indigenous kings of color. It's like, it's a small group when we stick together, because we know what it's like to be viewed as less than just from how we look. Or we can step on stage and do this phenomenal number, and someone can say, oh, well, like you didn't have as many rhinestones as that queen, so that queen's better than you. And you're like,
so petty.
Are we in kindergarten again?
I know, definitely. Unfortunately, the bullying that a lot of queers experience gets siphoned right back into the community
from within, right?
It is, and it's not. I don't want to say it's self-hate. It's just the fact that there's a lot of unfortunate shit that a lot of us haven't processed yet, and we think that like, oh, the queer community will understand why I'm like this. But it's like, no, we all should heal together. We shouldn't just accept that we're being awful to each other because we had bad things happen to us.
Guys, everyone, I want to open it up because we are getting a little bit to the end, though we can go as long as we want. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
We did shower. We promise we don't bite.
Yeah.
We're not live, so technically we can't bite you.
Exactly.
Susan number 2 of 4. Sorry, we laughed because there was a Rebel Kings of Oakland show where everyone was Rebecca. So
everybody came in as me.
Exactly, that happened. that happened to
Last Pride.
Last
Oh my
Pride.
God,
We did a big giant event, and I had put the link as like the link after I had signed in. I didn't think twice about it. So when people all logged in, it was literally 60 Rebecca Salises, and I use Vex in my everyday life. So I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I cried from laughing so hard during that show. We have hashtags. We are all Rebecca.
Yeah, it's almost
awesome.
Rebecca.
Like, we still remember it to this day.
But anyway, hi, ask away, friends.
I'm noticing the triangle on the right side of the flag on my screen. But when I Google the image, the triangle is always on the left. So is there intention there? Is the screen mirrored?
No, this is mirrored.
Okay.
Yeah, Zoom's weird. So it's on our left. I think it's appearing on your right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Somewhere in the depths of the internet, it gets flipped and we're like beyond our pay grade to understand it.
There's a question from the real Susan R in chat. How long has the pink triangle on Twin Peaks been displayed?
Oh.
Ooh, trivia.
Oh, I don't know, but I've seen it for at least for the past few years. You're talking the one on the hill, right?
Yeah.
Our folks who have been around a while, I don't know. I feel like I've lived in San Francisco Bay Area for 12 years. I feel like I've always seen it. Eddie, do you know? I'm calling on people now.
Everyone, reveal your knowledge.
I've been here 10 years and it's been there the whole time. So that's why I was wondering if anyone knew how long it's actually been being put up.
26th annual.
Okay.
I'm basically so confused by it all. It's very hard.
Usually our favorite person.
All right, Tom McKay just told us 40 years at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit crazy, and you know, I'm kind of old, and I thought the rainbow flag was supposed to carry everybody, and you know, it's evolving, and I don't know that I'm evolving with it, to be perfectly honest. But
Hey.
one comment I want to make about you two is great admiration. I mean, your culture comes from a very machismo point of view, and I know that trans people as well as drag people are hunted, stalked, murdered all over the world, but especially in Latin areas. And you've got some cojones is all I can say.
Thank you, Eddie. And you know, I have to give it up to Jota because one of Jota's taglines is putting the cheese in machismo. It's like, I can't beat that. Like, I'm done, you know, shadow of my father forever. And I think it takes a lot. Like there was one number that I'm working on where it addresses machismo. And I think drag is that outlet for us to explore what could a world look like without machismo? What could
it could be so beautiful.
Yeah. Or, you know, if we look at in pre-colonialization, there were many matriarchal societies or all truly oligarchical societies. And like, what happened if we revisited that? And I think that's the beauty of drag is we get to explore those, I don't want to say fantasies, but
dynamics.
Like concepts and figure out how we bring them back into our communities or our, I call IRL, like in real life.
Or like in modern times even.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I just want to say how educational this has been. I'm really glad I attended all of the presentations because I really learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot, but it was one of those things we've been talking about, like opening yourself up to learning. Like you can't go into a situation thinking you know everything or you're not going to learn anything. So this has been terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We wish there were more folks like you.
Yes.
Find fine wines who are encouraging themselves to learn more.
Right. And Eddie, I know you said this is like a lot, and honestly, it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming for just us as trans, non-binary people. But the most important thing is that you just stay open and willing. And that's all we can do. And we just want, especially as queer people, that to be reciprocated amongst our community. So you can just be honest, just be like, this is new to me. If maybe a new friend comes into your life who is trans, but maybe uses they, them pronouns, but also might look a way that you're not used to, you can, if they're your friend, you can be candid with them and they'll be candid with you too, it's all about growth and love and intention. So,
and I'll leave you with, even if you don't have a friend, like we see when people are trying. And particularly for this community, like the fact that y'all are willing to try
or even attend.
Many of us have elders and grandparents who we don't talk to because they don't try.
Yeah.
And they're unwilling to see us. And we can't stress how wonderful it is for, whether we've met you in the past, whether it's the first time we'll meet you, what you just trying means so much. And I think it's more than maybe
getting it right
cisgendered folks will ever know, but for us it's like, wow, like those are the stories that we kind of keep with us when when we're having a bad day or we're down and out. It's like, oh yeah, like I hope the folks at SF Senior Center are doing well because they were a great group of people. So
awesome.
I think it's been very educational too. Also, to me, I don't pretend to understand it. I think it's changing, but to me, what's important is just loving people for who they are and allowing them to identify who they are. And being open at any age. I mean, I don't consider myself too old to be open. I mean, it's new to me, and I'm retired, but I'm in the clinical community. But it's new. It wasn't very well known to our community until a few years ago. But we can all love, and we can all not judge, and we can all let people find themselves, and we can all accept everybody as they define themselves. That's all that I know.
And one Instagram quote that I saw recently said, you don't have to love someone, but you should acknowledge them. And I think there is so much power in just acknowledgement, even if you say like, I don't understand your identity. I don't understand your lived experience. And like, what pronouns do you use? How can I best affirm you? How can I best support you? And I think, this is a question that our community needs to ask ourselves even more, especially for those of us who own a spectrum of expressions and identities. And sometimes even we know the answer, we're like, oh, this is new. So let me get back to you next week.
Sometimes when I don't want to think, I'm like, all of them. I don't.
Sparkly, like sparkles.
It comes down to not harming others, by doing what you said, by asking, what do you need me to know about you? How can I address you and all that? The intent is not to harm. To me, it's just not to harm.
Yeah, I agree.
And not to support institutions that harm, including my own religion, which I'm on the brink of leaving.
Are we in the savage hour of the presentation? Like,
that's a years-long presentation, right?
I love it. Thanks, Patricia.
You're welcome.
Yeah, like they say, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is ambivalence, or one of those words, like just not caring. And it's important to care. And it's like, look what you're missing if you don't care. This is, this person is what you're missing. This culture is what you're missing if you don't care. So. Anybody else? Did you guys, I forgot if you had a skit or if it was the video.
I feel like this whole past hour has been our skit,
right?
It absolutely has been. I just want to cut you off.
The craziest part is we act like this normally. It's like, that's just what happens. So
like the dynamic between you guys is so real, and you talked about it earlier, but it's like so beautiful, and it's anything but forced. Like how you said, like that story about Jota, about your first drag dad. Like this is what chosen family is, right? This is what chosen community is. And it's like in action right here in front of our eyes. So it's pretty awesome. All right. Any other questions or comments, guys? I realize I need to stop saying guys.
I would like to just comment about the part of your lecture that talked about the houses. And I had to remember the 1990s film, Paris is
Yes, Paris is Burning.
And that is where the houses, I mean, I very much remember the House of I mean, you know, I can't even remember I mean, they're beautiful, the terms and that kind of thing.
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza, that's it. Extravaganza. And, you know, I really get it, the way you are saying. It's almost like a community within a community within a community within a community. And that's how it's got to work, one way or the other.
Yep. Seriously.
For folks who have HBO Max, go. There's way too many streaming services. I can't keep track at this point. There is a show called Legendary, and there's 2 seasons. The second season just came out, and it's a ballroom competition. Yeah, I mean, it is. They actually gave enough production money to that show for it to be stunning. And it's, you know, House of Versace, House of Milan, House of I can't speak French to save my life, so I'm gonna try it. But you know, even to look into those stories, and I think about, wow, like you know, season 1 came out in like 2020 or 2019. I'm like, I would not have seen this 10 years ago. I don't think we would believe that we would be centering brown, black, trans, queer individuals. Or I think there was a House of Ninja in season 1 is an all cis female house, which is unusual. So like, again, seeing the biases in our own society and our queer communities. So, you know, if you have anyone who will let you borrow their password, not that I'm endorsing that, but you know how it works.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. Very exciting.
That's awesome. All right. So I think I'll just end it by saying this has been a production of the San Francisco Senior Center. You all, along with our program tonight, by the way, 6 o'clock is our drag show with 3 Queens Are We. I couldn't think of a better way to finish off the month than with drag. Having you 2 on to tell your story, the story of drag, the story of your lives, has just been incredible. So thank you so much. And I do want to say that sort of behind everything we do at the San Francisco Senior Center is with intention around living well and aging well. Intentional about the programs we put on, the connections we make. And so on that note, if I could ask Jill, she's just going to talk a little bit about our Living Well, Aging Well mission. So Jill.
Thank you. This has been remarkable. So thank you very much for your kind hearts for sharing with us. So at the core of Living Well, it is the knowledge that it's the stories that give us this deep insight into knowledge and understanding of the rich diversity and culture of our community. So thank you for sharing your stories. It's wonderful. One of the modalities is about spirituality, and we provide a safe, supportive place to experience life's journeys and enrich our purpose and existence. And this has been a journey with the 2 of you. So thank you for sharing. And in the end, we always look for outcomes. And I just felt like engagement, connecting meaningful with one's own immediate world. And you have really helped us feel connected. So thank you so much.
Like,
squinching my eyes, trying not
I'm
to
not
cry.
crying, you're crying.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us and involving us.
Thank you,
This is
Jota.
such
Thank you.
a pleasure.
This has been a pleasure, and I don't know about you all, but we could definitely talk about when it's safer to meet in person. If you want us to run your
Yeah.
karaoke party,
Oh,
play
wow.
around with bingo.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come hang out.
You thought Queens were fun. Wait till you
I
see
will
some cake.
absolutely. Yes.
Seriously.
Okay. That was the quote. It was like been a quote of the session every month, and that was it. You thought Queens were fun. You guys
Yes.
were so much fun. Thank you so much. Happy Pride also.
Pride was a riot.
Everyone, this is their first of 3 shows, if we want to call it a show or a session or presentation. This is your first of 3 today. So I imagine you have a very busy weekend ahead of you.
So I gotta turn in my lighting notes for Saturday.
Oh boy, I'm going to a wedding, so I don't know about you, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much
Thank
for your
you.
time, for your
Thank you
openness.
so much.
Thank you, Crystal, for coordinating. It was
Our pleasure.
what a great way to kick off our slew of shows today.
Mhm.
Happy Pride. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
all.
Thank you.
Be well.